Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. The time is now 6:46, seeing some of that beautiful daylight in the morning sky, but we're still seeing some cold temperatures. Sounds like later in the day has some promises of warming up. I'll have the details on that in just a few minutes. A late night 7-3 vote by the Billings City Council pushes the One Big Sky project to its next stage. The vote means project proponents will move to the state level to garner support. Leaders of One Big Sky call the project a vision to create one of America's great cities of tomorrow. Monday night's meeting was open for public comment. Some people talked about the positive impact the project can have for the future of their businesses here in Billings, or what the district could do for their family and their family's future. Some opposed, talking about a plan B, asking why we aren't working with what we already have here in Billings and building on that. The new city administrator spoke to the council, urging the council to adopt the plan.
Here to have Billings be a community that is greater for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, something I suspect everyone in this room would sign on to having it as an aspiration for us here in Billings.
So your decision tonight to move forward with this plan actually sends a pretty loud voice to the rest of the state. Time for the state of Montana to get in the game, look at its economic development tools, and move our state forward.
Last night's vote also means the agreement for the project's development plan will move forward. Making national headlines this Tuesday morning, key Senate and House lawmakers in Washington have reached an agreement in principle aimed at avoiding a second partial government shutdown at midnight on Friday. A congressional source says the agreement includes more than $1.3 billion for barriers such as fencing, but no wall. It calls for a reduction in the number of ICE detention beds, a key demand of Democrats. At a campaign rally in El Paso, Texas last night, President Trump said the wall is being built. Montana U.S. Senator Steve Daines visited what he calls ground zero of the southern border crisis and says he came away more convinced than ever that the border needs to be secured. Daines says he saw several of the hundreds of people who agents told him crossed the Rio Grande at that spot not far from McAllen, Texas each night. He says Border Patrol agents also told him that they are only able to stop about 10% of drugs and people coming across the border in this area, and that building a 135-mile of the wall there would enable them to reverse that. Daines is pushing hard for the full $5.7 billion that the president wants for border wall funding.
Perhaps the biggest takeaway that I had of the entire night was the fact that we are seeing a flood of illegal drugs pouring across our southern border. Past presidents, Democrats and Republicans, have been able to get border security funding approved by Congress, have built walls. This has become a political football.
Daines said that drugs are being brought across the border, particularly meth, that are finding their way to Montana. Going on special assignment in Montana, drugs are infiltrating our community faster than law enforcement can keep up. In fact, meth prosecutions have increased 33% statewide as drug traffickers with direct lines to Mexican drug cartels use our interstate system as a drug superhighway. In a special investigation, we dive into Montana's meth epidemic and learn how law enforcement is tasked with stopping the drugs. On the interstate, Montana's Highway Patrol acts as the first line of defense in the fight against meth. In 2017, the Montana legislature funded a criminal interdiction team. 6 full-time troopers with specialized training in narcotics are conducting high volumes of traffic stops, looking for criminal activity and drugs. It's led by Sergeant Jim Sanderson, who says the team has made a dent in drug operations.
We can at the very least hurt them where it hurts the most. And that's by taking their product off the road, and that's by taking the criminal proceeds from the sale of that product off the road. And so that's what we're specializing on.
Tonight on Q2, reporter Andrea Lutz takes us along with troopers to show us how fast and how often drugs are seized on Montana's streets, shedding light on these drugs and how they get here. Secretary of State Corey Stapleton is ordered to pay $4,000 for ethics violations related to his campaign for governor. The Montana Commissioner of Political Practices says the violations stem from Stapleton's candidacy announcement. An employee sent out the announcement from her state email account, which featured the Montana state seal. That's when the Montana Democratic Party filed a complaint saying the announcement misused state resources. At this time, Stapleton can ask for a review of the fine. A 60-mile stretch of highway in southeast Montana is back open to traffic after being shut down for hours. This after military projectiles spilled out onto the road during an accident. It happened when 3 semi-trucks crashed on Highway 212 after 9 o'clock Sunday night near Hammond, causing the closure between Broadus and Alzada. Carter County Sheriff Neil Kittleman says 2 semi-trucks collided, then a 3rd semi crashed into them and went into a ditch. Kittleman says one of the semis was carrying the military explosives and the Air Force was called in to assist with the removal. Billings police have located a man reported missing yesterday. 34-year-old Kevin Leavitt was located at 2 o'clock this morning while checking into a local hotel. He was first reported missing on Monday afternoon. Police checked on him and he is no longer considered a missing person. A Browning teenager's death is now the subject of an FBI investigation. Brittany Madplume was found dead in a vehicle on the morning of January 12th. She had left her home the night before but never returned. When she was found, it was discovered she had been beaten with bruises all over her face, arms, and hands. The FBI cannot comment any further on this investigation as it is still ongoing. Brittany was a mother of 2 young children. The family of Ashley Loring Heavy Runner are still searching for answers after she went missing 19 months ago. In December, Kimberly Loring testified in front of the United States Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. She says since the hearing, the FBI has received multiple tips about what happened to Ashley. Ashley's family is still searching the Blackfeet Reservation for any clues about what happened to her. The FBI says the remains found in December are still being analyzed. Some Montana prison inmates in Deer Lodge say they went without heat during one of the latest cold snaps. The Montana ACLU is taking on complaints and reports the cold was so severe that frost gathered on the inside of the cell windows. The ACLU tells MTM that prison officials admit they are having a problem with one of the boilers in the facility. An inmate's relative who filed one of the complaints said she spoke with prisoners who say the problem is in a building where many inmates sleep.
There's guys that are freezing all night long and just praying for daylight, so that they can get access to some warmth. And I don't care what you did, if you're incarcerated, you've got the right to be treated like a human.
The Montana State Prison did not return MTM's request for a comment on Monday. From Helena, state lawmakers are learning about the effects of alcohol as Montana law enforcement pushes for a new DUI law. Montana Highway Patrol hosted a wet lab Monday afternoon. Volunteers, both civilians and elected officials, were given alcohol over a period of time. Then they were given standard DUI field tests showing just how many drinks it would take to reach impaired status. The Montana Department of Justice is advocating for Senate Bill 65. It would rewrite the state's current DUI laws in a more comprehensive code.
There's nothing wrong with drinking. This is not an anti-drinking bill by any means. It's becoming impaired and getting behind the wheel. That is not acceptable.
Sager said Montana has a sad history with drinking and driving, added the current DUI and alcohol-related fatality rate is unacceptable. Montana continues to see a sharp rise in influenza cases. Public health officials say Montana saw 728 new cases earlier this month. Those numbers are up from just under 500 the previous reporting period. Since the start of the flu season, there have been more than 2,200 confirmed cases, 124 hospitalizations, and 3 deaths, including a child. 5 counties, including Yellowstone, have seen more than 200 confirmed cases.
We're still giving flu shots now. It's still highly recommended. The season nowadays doesn't seem to end until April or May. So it's worth it to come and get protected.
Only 4 counties in Montana have not reported any cases of the flu this season. Now we go to the University of Montana, where more flooding is being reported. Now the Losmussen Center is experiencing flooding, and just this weekend the Mansfield Library flooded too. While flooding in Losmussen didn't cause a complete closure of the building, we are told it did disrupt services. Contractors worked to dry out the building after a frozen fire sprinkler leaked on Monday. Meanwhile, a spokesperson at UM says crews are working tirelessly to reopen the library. They hope to have it open by today.